Welcome back to Weems Motor Co. Let's get the tank mounted up on the dolly mongrel. Stick around. If you've been following us along on this project, you may have seen a few things added to the project that haven't been featured on the videos, and that's because we do a lot of testing and fitting and fabrication. All of these little drawings that you've seen over here are all little pieces and parts that I had to fabricate and see if they would actually work on the motorcycle. Some did, some didn't. When I'm doing that kind of work, I find it more mentally healthful for me to not record those, because hours and hours and hours are spent developing, testing, fitting, putting pieces on and realizing they just don't work. And to add to that, if I'm recording, like setting up this camera and with lighting and audio and stuff, that just takes even longer. So a lot of those pieces of parts didn't make it part of the mix, but today I said, you know what, we're going to tackle it. We're going to mount the 1947 Norton International tank on there, and you may have seen it in other videos sitting on the frame, but it was never permanently affixed because I didn't have the rubber mounts and all of the things that I wanted to use. So I've got all the little rubber grommets, all of the hardware and stuff to make the mounts to fit onto that 1936 Royal Enfield frame. We're going to utilize this front motor mount. I loved the way it was designed, very rudimentary. I'm talking, 1930s. So we're going to utilize that same front tank mount. We're going to have to modify it, make it a little bit wider to fit that tank. But also this rear one, I'm going to try and utilize it also, but the problem is it's too far forward in the frame, so I'm gonna have to cut some welds off underneath there, and we'll see if we can move it back possibly close to this seat post mount and hang right there for the rear mount. Will it work? Don't know. We might have to fabricate a whole new one from scratch, but that's what we're doing today in the video. First thing we need to do is get some measurements off of the tank, figure out how wide that front mount needs to be, how wide that rear mount needs to be. Make a couple plates. I've got some steel here laid out that basically I'm going to try to utilize that and weld it up to those same mounts and see if we can get this Norton tank mounted up on the dolly mongrel. Enough talking. Let's get to work. Alright, so after getting some dimensions, we discovered we need a piece of steel 3/16 thick, 6.5 inches long, and 1.25 inches wide, where we are going to lay out where those two holes go that correlate to the two holes at the front of the tank. Pretty easy tab. Now how we take that and fix it to the existing tank mount is going to be the fun part. We'll go ahead and knock out the front one, and then we'll move our way on to the back so that we know where we need to move that rear tank mount to on the frame. All right, let's lay this out onto steel, drill some holes, grind some corners, and see if we can get it mounted up. Let's get to work. now we got that all roughed out, ready to go, we can test fit it on the front of this tank, and then we're gonna have to open these holes back up because I have some nice recessed rubber isolating bungs to go underneath there so we don't have metal to metal contact, which is never good around gasoline. So we'll test fit it, make sure those holes line up good, and then we'll go over and open those holes back up for those rubber grommets. Let's try it out. Really quickly, I just want to show you guys how this rubber isolation kit works. Essentially, this is from a Triumph motorcycle tank setup. So I figured what I know I can use, and what I can use I can put on this bike. So that's what we're doing. So we opened up that big hole. You're gonna have a bolt. Now this bolt is what screws into the bottom of the tank. Obviously you don't want that metal to metal contact. So we're gonna put one of these convex washers over the top of that bolt. And then we have that one rubber grommet that is recessed. So we're gonna put that right on top of there, just like that. And then let's say this is our part of our frame. That is going to slide up inside of that hole that we made there. And then between the metal and the tank, we have another solid rubber grommet, and that squishes all together and screws up inside of your tank. And as it squishes, you obviously have more threads exposed. But that's how we rubber isolate this tank. We're gonna do one more test fit, make sure everything lines up nice and neat, and then we'll head over to the frame and try to figure out how we're gonna get this piece of metal fixed onto that frame. Let's test fit. So, like I said before, I really like this front bracket. It's in a great place. I looked underneath when I had it mocked up, and it was lined just where those holes need to be. It just wasn't wide enough. So what I'm gonna do is actually unbolt this from the frame and bring it over, and we're gonna see about where to cut this so that we can weld that other plate on, aligning everything up nice and neat right in the center of the tank, because we don't want this tank to sit to one side or the other. We want it to be lined just perfectly up. So get it unbolt, get it over to the tank, and let's see where we need to mark this thing up to chop it in half. Let's do it. I don't know about you guys, but there is something cool about seeing how things was engineered almost 100 years ago. And as I look at this bracket, I'm like, man, that is, talk about the easy way to do things. It's not very technical. It's literally like 3 pieces of steel. They bent a couple of them and then welded the top on it. So we're gonna stick with that same idea. We could get fancy with it, but you know, this is a motorcycle that I'm trying to capture the essence of how things were done way back when. So I think what I'm gonna do is probably grind these welds away on both sides so that we can lose this top plate, and then we'll use these 2 bottom ones and just weld that new one on the same exact way they did it in 1936. So pretty rudimentary. Just need to make sure that we got that in the center of the tunnel of the tank, get everything nice and marked, and then we can weld those tabs back on there. So, too easy. Let's do it. Now that we got it all welded up, let's mount it back on the frame and do a test fit on that front so that we can figure out what we're gonna do with that rear mount for the tank. Fingers crossed it'll work. If not, we'll have to come up with some other idea. So let's get the tank on there. As you can tell, there's quite a bit of difference there. I'm not even sure if we're going to be able to use that existing bracket up there. I think the best idea right off the top of my head is to come across with a tab all the way across, very similar to like Triumphs are on their front motor mount. But there is one other problem. Let me show you. So here's the issue. On our front motor mounts, they're the same height across. But back here, as you can tell, they're different. Now, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to do some research. I'm going to go back and look at the Norton International frames that this tank comes from to see what they did back there. However, even what they did is not going to apply to what we got going on with that 36 Royal Enfield frame. So I might have to take some inspiration from what they did originally and see if we can figure that out, because the way I'm looking, it's about 3/4 of an inch lower on this side compared to this side. So our bracket may have to go up and step down and then go across, or we may just do two separate brackets that weld into the backbone of the frame. I don't know. Let's stew on that. While I'm stewing on that, you guys jump down in the comments and let me know if you've ever faced some sort of tribulation or trial like this when working on a bike. I mean, I've worked on a lot of things and bought parts that's supposed to go on motorcycles and just don't fit. So let me know one of those stories of when you faced a hardship while we go do some research and figure out what we're going to do on this. So after doing some internet research, we discovered that 1939 Norton manual that showed a picture of the frame, and it did show that that is a bracket that's made onto the frame and it is stepped down. So I think the process here is going to be, first of all, cut this one off and see if we could possibly get it further back with the measurements. Not sure if it's going to work or not, but we got to get it off the frame regardless. And we'll go ahead and make the bracket for the rear portion of the tank and go ahead and bend it down, and then we'll figure out where we can go to from there. So, some work to do. Cut it off, make a bracket. Let's get it done. So keeping in the theme of doing things like they would have done in the 30s, we heated it up, put it on the vise, bent it, made it nice and neat, fits perfectly now. Now we got to take the bracket back off, take the tank back over to the frame, bolt the front ones up, bolt the back ones up, and figure out how we're going to mount this. If that doesn't tell you a little piece of story of this motorcycle as I'm building it, yes. Things go on, things come off, they get bolted together, they get unbolted, they go back and forth and back and forth. It's a long process to take something so cool like the Dolly Mongrel and put it together using all different motorcycle manufacturers in different years and different parts. So let's get the tank on there, let's see how we're going to do this rear mount. And just like that, we have the Norton International tank mounted up on the Dolly Mongrel. Now, got to pull it back off, get all the finishing welding done, make sure that it's nice and sturdy so that when we put gas in this thing, no welds break or anything. But that's going to wrap up the video today. It's been a great time. Bike's coming together awesome. Thank you for hanging out. If you didn't watch any of the other videos, make sure you go back and watch some of those. But with that, if you are new around here, jump down and hit that subscribe button. If you really like the video, hit that thumbs up, turn those notifications on, and let everyone know what's going on right here at Weems Motor Co. Peace.